He is a professor of water resources and irrigation and hydraulics at the hydraulics department at the Cairo University. He's a professor of he has more 20 years of research and consultancy experience in water and environmental projects. His PhD 2004 from the University of Nevada in the United States. He published many papers in international journals with high impact factor in groundwater and hydrology, involved in several national committees dealing with the Nile basin countries. He have a history in this process, developed and coordinated the water engineering and environment Bachelor of Science program. It's a nice program, by the way. I'm just advertising it for the people. And the Shared Water Resources Diploma at Cairo University.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hani, for the floor and for this introduction. Well, today I will try to give you some insight about the JERD negotiation from the technical perspective. Also, I will try to answer some of the hard questions that my friend and colleague Hani pointed to me. So my outline today for today's talk just will be divided into 3 sessions. I will start first by giving some background on Washington process, and then talking a little bit about Washington agreement, then giving you some aspects, technical aspects about the different Egyptian proposal for a win-win deal for filling and operation the JERD. So to start, why I prefer to share with you some insight about Washington process. As you remember from the marathon presented from my colleague presentation, he pointed out IBWE as one of the success story because it's the only process that ended with a document. Also, Washington is the second process that ended with a document, although it was not concluded from the 3 countries. So talking about Washington, you may hear a lot of rumors about the process, how it does, how things are going. So just to clarify things, I will start with the background to give factual facts, factual reporting about Washington process. So the process is started back in November 2019 with a meeting from the ministers of foreign affairs of the 3 countries with the government of the US, represented by the Treasury, and the World Bank. And the main conclusion of the November 6th meeting was as follows. Number 1, to hold 4 technical governmental meetings headed by the ministers of water resources. 2, the World Bank and the US would support the process and attend this meeting as observer with no rule, just to observe the process of technical negotiation. 3, there will have 2 meetings in Washington to assess and support the process. 4, we will work toward having a full agreement, comprehensive agreement on filling and operation of the Grand Renaissance Ethiopian Dam to be ended by January 15th, 2020. And if the agreement is not reached, then Article 10 of the DOB will be invoked with the arbitration and to get the 3 countries together. So going to the process, this is the spectrum of the process. It started first with the first meeting here back in Addis Ababa on 15th, 16th November. Then the second meeting was in Cairo in the 2nd and 3rd December. And then the first assessment was in Washington, D.C. to assess the achievement of the 2 technical meetings. In the 2 technical meetings, the 3 countries discussed together how to get closer in the filling and operation. Each country present their views and try to bridge the gap. And when we went back to Washington in the first assessment meeting, it was on December 9th, the decision was 3 decisions. First, to focus on some strategic direction, to put rules for filling and operation of the JERD, and to define a drought, and accordingly to define drought mitigation measures. After that, we followed by 2 technical governmental meetings, one in Khartoum on the 21st and 22nd of December, and the second in Addis Ababa on 8th and 9th January. Then the second assessment was conducted in Washington, D.C. on 13th and 15th January 2002. And during that second session, you remember there was proposed to have full agreement by this date. Unfortunately, we didn't reach to full agreement. So they decided, put some guidance and asked to continue the process. And this guidance was as follows. 1, to give rapid fill to the level of 595, which is the level that enabled full turbine operation of DERT, while providing appropriate mitigation measures. This is like the balance. They asked to do the balance between the interest of upstream and the interest of downstream, to give rapid achievement of 595 and to give appropriate mitigation measure. The second is to develop a mechanism that depends on release from the DERT and function of 2 important criteria: the hydrology, the incoming discharge, Q, and the water level inside the DERT. And third, they define already 3 categories of a drought, which 1 single year dry year, or prolonged period of dry years, or prolonged period of drought. Fourth, they advise to have a good dispute resolution in the agreement. These are the direction from the second assessment meeting. Following that, the technical and legal meetings continued from the 3 countries in Khartoum on 22nd and 23rd January in order to trying to achieve this guidance from the ministers of foreign affairs and Minister of Water Resources of the 3 countries. Then we went to Washington again on 28 and 30, from 28 to 31st of January, where an agreement have been reached for the technical part of mitigation and filling schedule. As you can read here, filling schedule and mitigation measure in the filling and operation. I'm saying agreement, you can refer to the statement released by the 6 ministers and the DC, Washington government and the World Bank, where they agreed on these rules and advised to continue drafting the process. So we continue, where from the 3rd to the 11th February, a work group were working on the World Bank in Washington from the 3 countries just to draft the final documents or the final agreement. And then the process comes to, in the DC, the 6 ministers from the 3 countries again come to assess the outcomes from the working group. And they decided on that date where a draft document were prepared with differences from each country. And this, on that date, decided to let the US and the World Bank agreed to facilitate preparation of the final draft. So the draft that prepared by the 3 countries, on that date, the World Bank and the US government decided to facilitate getting the final version that's supposed to be signed out at the last meeting on the end of February. So all these process and all, you can imagine all that time and the tremendous effort, traveling time, resources that have been exerted from the 3 countries were owned and operated by the 3 countries. But at the end, on the last of February, the last day where the 3 countries supposed to sign, unfortunately, our colleague from Ethiopia were not able to attend, They ask for more time for internal consultation. We hear that after we reached Washington already. And both Egypt and Sudan came the last meeting, attended, give some remarks, and the final version was initiated from Egypt to show the political wills of the process. And this is like the factual documents. You can refer to the statements released by the 6 countries for each one of these. So going inside for the agreement itself, what does it contain? So I will focus only on the technical aspects. I'll talk about the filling schedule inside the agreement, the drought mitigation measures, the operation rules, and the refilling rules, also the drought mitigation and the operation rules, dam safety, coordination mechanism, and data sharing, and dispute resolution mechanism. These are just like the part of the technical part. There are other articles that's more of legal, the preamble, introduction, the definitions. I'm not just talking about, I'll just talk about the technical part of it. So going to the filling schedule, during the negotiation, we accepted the schedule proposed by our colleague and brother in Ethiopia, and we divided this filling into 2 critical components. The first component, which enable Ethiopia and enable GERD for a full generation of hydropower. This is corresponding to reaching the level that's operate the entire turbines. There was 16 turbines, and recently they reduced to be 13 turbines. And the second stage to fill after this full generation. The full generation divided into 2 stages. The first stage to fill 4.9 BCM, which is allow for the early generation. There are 2 turbines to generate, so 4.9 to allow for early generation. And the second stage is incremental 13.5 with total 18.4 BCM, which will allow full operation of all turbines. This is very critical point, and during the Washington negotiation, this agreed to be conducted as rapid as possible. As rapid as possible means the mitigation measures or the obligation on the Ethiopian side will be minimal in order to allow them for fast generation, and the downstream countries will support reaching this level fast. After reaching this stage, the second stage is to move from the full turbine level to the optimal operation level. Optimal operation level is the level where the power generation is generated optimally, the highest generation possible. So to reach that, there are 3 stages, stage up to 608, then stage up to 611, and final stage up to 625. This will become total storage 49.3. Again, as my colleague Dr. Hani said, these are stages. And the good things that the agreement built on the concept of adaptive and cooperative. Cooperative means we cooperate together. We will use high Aswan Dam storage at the early in order to allow for fast generation. And adaptive as mean you will adapt with the hydrology. If the hydrology is wet, means very high flow at the Blue Nile, Ethiopia can conduct the stage faster than 1 year. In normal, in 1 year. If it is drought, it will be less than 1 year. So it is adaptive with the hydrology, and the vice versa of the support from the upstream. If drought to occur and there is excess water in the storage, then it will be released for the downstream. How it will be released? It will be released based on certain rules and certain criteria, as well I'll explain later. So if you assess this agreement or this condition, you will find that in Washington they tried to give the balance between what's the interest from the Ethiopian side and what's the interest for the downstream. So if we ask Ethiopia, what is the interest from the GERD? The answer definitely will be operating GERD with optimum hydropower as soon as possible. Is that right? This is what would be the interest. So during that, Ethiopia have expeditious stages-based filling and have the options for allowing accelerating the filling during wet years and full support from the downstream to reach the full turbine level, 595, with minimum obligation on Ethiopian side. No mitigation is required below level 603. I said the level of full turbine is 590, and our colleague in Ethiopia, they ask for 5 meters to just avoid the water perturbation. So 595 is the minimum level they want to keep. And during the negotiation, we were pushed by back and forth to set this level to 603. 603 will allow Ethiopia permanently generate 75 to 80% from hydropower sustainably, which is the main reason for building the dam. So to keep the interest for Ethiopia in this side. And this is maintain efficiency of hydropower 75 to 80%. This is from one side, from the upstream side. What about the downstream side? The concern of the downstream side is the drought condition. So there are shared mitigation measures with clear obligation for each country, and there will be a support from GERD storage during drought, from GERD storage above the level of 603. So there is clear obligation using a mechanism that determine release based on the hydrological condition and the level at the GERD during 3 layers: dry years, prolonged period of drought, prolonged period of dry years, which keep the balance between the interest of the downstream and the interest with the upstream. Moving to the operation rules, I'll skip the mitigation measure for a while, just finish the operation rule. The operation rules allow for optimal, sustainable power generation for the GERD. What does it mean? During the normal condition, I mean normal hydrology or wet hydrology, GERD will be operated between the optimum operation level and the full capacity. So whatever flow is coming, GERD will store partially during the wet period, July and August, and release the entire flow by the end of the year. So it will keep fluctuating between the optimum level and the full capacity level, which in normal condition and in wet condition will allow full power generation with optimum generation capacity. This is the normal operation rules. Going to the hardest part, the mitigation rules. What are the mitigation rules? And this is the point of maybe debate. If we look to the GERD, you can find there are several layers. You can see 565 is the dead storage, where only 2 turbines are operated. The red line with the minimum operation level, which is 590 or 595. And then 603, which is the level that during Washington Agreement we agreed GERD not to go beyond. 625, the green line, which is the optimum operation level. This is the maximum level that needs GERD to be there for optimum generation. And the dashed line at the end, 640, is the full supply level. So the idea of the mitigation is as follows. If drought hits, then the downstream having water scarcity and the upstream still having less water coming at the dam. But the dam purpose, what is the function of the dam? What's the purpose of the dam? The purpose of the dam is to generate hydropower for the sake of our colleague in Ethiopia, our brothers in Ethiopia, they are suffering from less electricity. So in order to give them electricity, you need to release water. All we have agreed during the mitigation is the mechanism, the obligation of releasing this water and not releasing the entire water. As I said, we'll only ask to release water if the level above 603. So the only obligation in our brother in Ethiopia is to release water from 625 optimum operation level to 603. That is only 33% from the storage at Drought. This is the only support is required. And how much to release? Depending on filling or operation. In the filling, you will release 63% from this amount. In the operation, because you are in normal operation, you need to generate hydropower, so you will obligation to release this entire 100% from 625 to 603. So this is the mitigation level. And this mitigation level, only to occur if we have hit by 4 years of drought below certain threshold. So this is not will let Drought be arbitrary going up and down, only will go down during severe drought or prolonged drought. And at that case, the downstream also will have their share of drought mitigation. So this is the simply the mitigation measures in Washington Agreement. Also, the agreement include a coordination mechanism which has 2 levels, one at the ministerial level and one at the technical committee levels. They have to be formed to observe and follow up the agreement. And also one of the mandates is to amend and to change the agreement if there is something happen every 10 years. And the last things that I need to talk about it here is also the agreement include a robust dispute resolution through negotiation and arbitration if negotiation doesn't work. This is briefly the agreement Washington. Then I will move to our perspective from the Egyptian side, the proposals that we have presented and what are they. So before going in detail about the Egyptian proposal, I will ask the questions that's why Drought is a problem for Egypt or for the downstream. And here I will try to quote some of the keywords that's presented from our distinguished guest note speakers about the cooperation and reaching water security. One of the key issues was mentioned is the coordination. And this is something that's really missing here in the negotiation of the Drought. If you look to the Drought, you will find that the total storage is 74 billion cubic meter. That is 150% from the average flow of the Blue Nile. 150% of the average flow of the Blue Nile. Also in the system, there is High Aswan Dam with a storage 162. So the 2 dams together control 280% of the average annual natural flow. It is unprecedented combination of 2 large dams on the same river that are working without coordination. Name it in the world. If you look on the Colorado River, Senegal River, and in different basins in the Europe, you will find all the situation. You have to have a coordination between the 2 dams. This is one. A second point, which is also very critical, is the issue of the mitigation for the drought. If we look to the Nile River, this is the series of the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile, or the Nile in general, has a phenomenon, my colleague in hydrology know it very well, called Hurst phenomena. Hurst phenomena means there will be a correlation between the flows, either high or low. So if you look to this period, in the red rectangular, this is a period of the 80s. You remember where a dry period to occur. If with the current situation, without Drought, with the current situation, without taking Drought into consideration, if the 80s to occur, then a total shortage from the water use in Egypt will be about 53 billion cubic meters distributed on 4 years. And I will call the graph from the second speaker, Professor Elko, when he said the damage probability. And with increasing the amount of shortage, the damage is exponential. So adding GERD to the situation, if the filling coincide in this period or period like this, then the impact, if GERD filled without cooperation, if there is no coordination, then the impact could reach 128 to 143 billion cubic meters. This is a huge impact. That's why all our proposals build on we need cooperation strategy that can mitigate these extreme events. But it will never avoid water shortages in the downstream. So this is the crux of all what we are trying to get. So if we look to the specific impacts if non-cooperative strategy to occur, you will find as follows. There will be decreased resilience for HAT, because simply, as my colleague Dr. Hani presented, will be water shift from the storage from High Aswan Dam to GERD, which will cause significant increase in the risk of extreme impacts. There will be water shortage and artificial drought, which will have a chain reaction. A chain reaction, that reaction lead to reaction, like reduction in agricultural production, reduction in agriculture area, people losing part of their income, and increase for import. You know the critical situation for Egypt. Egypt considered is the driest country in the world. This is not my say, this is FAO database. If you go back to the FAO database, Egypt is the driest country in the world. We receive about 1.5 billion cubic meter per year only, and we live only on 6% from the area, and the remaining is permanently desert. If you go from this satellite, you can see the area of Egypt, just pure desert with no life. That's why we are keeping saying the Nile is the life for the Egyptian. The dependency for the Nile is more than 97%. And we are using this water to live. Most of our agricultural production is just depending on the Nile. And the agriculture sector account for about 32 to 35 from the labor force. And most, if you look in this labor force, about 50% of them are female who are taking care of their family. So this is the most fragile system in this society. So it is not only water security, it is water security leading to food security, leading to social unrest if water shortage to occur and people starting losing their income. So this is why we are very serious about this. Also, the dam safety associated with catastrophic impacts is one of the big question marks. We heard that some of the recommendations of IPWE have been implemented. We didn't see the level 2 documents, but this is one of the critical issues. The issue of unilateralism or lack of information also could lead to serious hazards. Will quote, if water released from GERD too much during a period that's just for example, Sudanese dam are high, then may cause some significant impact for Sudanese dam, or vice versa. You may remember in the media when the first filling of the GERD caused 6 water intake in Sudan to be cut out, and they were not able to sustain or drive water for water supply. So things of misinformation or no lack of information transfer could lead to a lot of problems. Other problems related to permanent reduction of hydropower in High Aswan Dam, also increasing soil salinity and saltwater intrusion due to the imbalance of natural system flow, maybe some degradation in water quality. This is mainly because of huge decrease of precision agriculture in Sudan and using fertilizers. and decreasing surface water levels, which is adversely impact the shallow groundwater and the transboundary environmental social impacts. So these are the spectrum of the impacts, as you can see, and this can easily mitigation by a good keyword, which is cooperation and river basin-wide perspective. Cooperation, river basin-wide perspective. If you link these two together and look for optimum river basin-wide management, then you can avoid a lot of these significant impacts. Just to quantify these impacts, 1 billion cubic meter of water shortage at Egypt, equivalent to 2,900 people losing their income, 130,000 hectares of cultivated land loss, 150 million increase in food import, and $430 million of agricultural production. This is the result not just from the Egyptian team, this is also based on international studies conducted by independent, highly qualified scientific team. So this is the result if 1 billion cubic meter water shortages to occur. The good thing, just to finish my presentation, is the picture is not that black. There is a win-win deal. If there is a political will to have this win-win deal. What is the win-win deal? A win-win deal that's balance between two things. Balance between generating hydropower efficiency with a minimum firm energy and secure water resources. Keep this balance. And keeping this balance is the key for a win-win deal. And this balance, we presented during the negotiation several proposals that trying to keeping these balance. I can classify, just for the sake of the time, classify them into three categories. The first category, which is the category that I love much, and this is most of the scientific people, you will find them referring to this category, which is multi-reservoir operation. Multi-reservoir operation, which adapt coordination approach between the two large dams. We offered this, and I will explain it in details in the next slide. Also, the second category of proposals that we presented, we borrow from the economy. It is based on a concept named a circuit breaker. What's a circuit breaker is? A circuit breaker approach, it is, in this approach, you have a regularity measures used to temporarily postpone a regular filling or a regular operation if crisis to occur. We borrow this from the economy. So in hydrology, we said if there will be a deficit at the Blue Nile with a certain threshold, then you stop regular filling, you stop regular operation, and start releasing some water according to certain rules. And the last category, which is adapted in Washington agreement, is the multi-layer approach, where you have three approaches: dry, prolonged drought, prolonged dry years, and for each approach, based on the risk, there will be a mitigation and there will be an action to occur. I'll just give you a little bit, the last two slides, about these concepts. So the concept of multi-reservoir operation, simply, we have here Drought at the left side, we have High Aswan Dam downstream, and we have the three Sudanese dam, Rosera, Sinnar, and Merawi on the middle. Since the Sudanese dam are over-year storage, so we are not consider them in this multi-reservoir operation. We consider the large two dams, Drought and High Aswan Dam. The concept is to divide the storage into three categories. The drought or prolonged drought zone, which is the red zone, below the hydropower shutdown level, then a critical zone or alarming zone between the shutdown and the critical level, which is given by the yellow color, and the green color is the prosper zone. So the idea is, with the multi-reservoir operation, as long as the two dams in the green zone, in the prosper zones, do whatever you want. Every dam can operate like he wants. In the alarming, you start having alarm. So you start to activate the mitigation because you are going to empty or depleting your storage. In the drought or prolonged drought, the below shutdown, then you are using water and sacrificing hydropower. These are the three categories. Knowing that GERD, the main purpose is hydropower, we didn't ask GERD to use the water in the red zone. So just in the green and the yellow zone. So the idea is we will start filling GERD. So GERD will start filling, start early generation, and as long as the high S1 dam in the green zone continue filling, accelerating filling. I repeat what my colleague said. We love to have GERD operated and filled as fast as possible, because we have a turbulence in the system. If you finish it quickly, that is the perfect situation. So as long as we are in the green zone, fill as much as you can. If a drought hit, then you will start depleting the green zone. Once we reach the alarming zone, GERD will stop filling, but will not stop operating or generating hydropower. What will happen? It will start taking the water coming year by year, increase the level, and reducing by the end of the season. Increase the level and reducing by the end of the season, generating hydropower and helping the downstream in the critical situation. And if drought continue, as I said, we will not ask GERD to go below the 603. The downstream will continue using the water in the system. This is the issue of the multi-reservoir operation. So if I have water, I support the upstream by asking to release less water. If I don't have water, I ask from the upstream to release extra water. So it is a cooperation mode and coordination mechanism. That is, you are not releasing water except if you need it for the downstream. And with this approach, we offered about 60 to 65 billion cubic meters secured from High Aswan Dam to cooperate for GERD filling. And GERD will continue filling and generating hydropower in the most severe conditions, and it provides both buffer for Egypt to mitigate the drought and for Ethiopia to generate hydropower in 80% with efficiency 80%. And by the way, the loss of GERD hydropower in this multi-reservoir operation is very limited, as it is optimizing the resources for the whole system. The last point I need to share with you, the issue of the 3 layers. Why there will be 3 layers? We talk about the concept of 3 layers. If you look to the dry or the probability of the flow at Blue Nile, you will find that below the average, 50% is the average, occur 50% of the time, above average 50% of the time, less average 50% of the time. If the flow below average, you come into dry condition. And this dry condition can be classified into certain categories based on the international standards: mild, moderate, severe, extreme, and exceptional. We were supporting the upstream by saying we were actually asking not to fill if the condition is starting on the severe condition. However, we moved this threshold and moved to have filling in the middle of the severe condition, not in the moderate condition, but in the severe condition. So to fill with this period is, if the flow above the red line, GERD can continue filling. If below this line, then GERD will not fill and start to support the downstream. And how much time to support? If you look at the probability of 4 years, you will find that in 98% of the time, there will no obligation on the GERD and only the obligation on 2%. So to conclude, this is what we are looking for, the ingredients for our proposal. We are looking for a win-win proposal, comprehensive, equitable, reasonable, based on burden sharing, and finally, adaptive and cooperative approach. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Hesham. We will leave the questions we received to the last, after the last speaker.